August 1942, mid-Atlantic. The gray Atlantic swells heaved beneath the hull of U-464, the mighty Type 14 submarine, as Kapitan-Leutnant Otto Harms surveyed his domain from atop the conning tower. The milk cow, a floating warehouse packed with hundreds of tons of diesel fuel and provisions, was the backbone of the wolf pack, extending the reach of Nazi submarines deep into the Allied shipping lanes. Harms stood, hands on hips, grinning at his men. They'd just completed a rendezvous with another U-boat pack, resupplying them safely hundreds of miles from enemy patrols. The Atlantic, he thought, belonged to them. "Aircraft bearing 270, called the watch officer, voice only faintly troubled. Harms lazily raised his binoculars. On the horizon, crawling across the evening sky, was something that seemed torn straight from another era. A lumbering British biplane, twin wings stacked like a child's toy, open cockpit glinting in the setting sun. He scoffed, lowering his binoculars. "Swordfish," he muttered, eliciting chuckles from his officers. The ferry Swordfish was a relic. Every Kriegsmarine man knew it. Slow, fabric-covered, with the silhouette belonging in a museum. "Should we dive?" asked the watch officer, respecting protocol. "For that," Harms replied, waving away the suggestion, "our gunners could use the practice." His hubris was not entirely unfounded. U-464, operational for just 4 months, had carried precious fuel and supplies to dozens of attack subs. Without her, the smaller Type 7s would limp home after a few weeks. With the milk cows, they could hunt Allied convoys for months. These resupply submarines, it was said, were more valuable than 10 attack boats. The German effort in 1942 was achieving record sinkings. Over 600,000 tons of Allied shipping lost in June. Churchill himself fretted at the U-boat threat. Their confidence seemed unshakable. Below decks, the crew felt secure. The Swordfish was mocked relentlessly in German circles. Foreign pilots called it the string bag for its grocery store versatility and ancient looks. Open cockpit, slow speed, the ultimate easy target. But as the biplane banked into attack, their contempt would soon turn to fear. "She's turning toward us," said the watch officer, now less sure. Harms' lips curled in a smirk. "Then we give them a proper German welcome." Flak guns swung into position, the 37mm and 20mm cannon leveled and ready to shred the old biplane. He would learn, too late, that this museum piece had left disasters in its wake. Taranto, Bismarck, the Swordfish had become the Allied submarine hunting champion. Tonight, 3 men in an obsolete biplane would rewrite the rules of war. Everything about the Swordfish screamed obsolete. Designed in the early 1930s, entering service before most German crews were even born, its top speed was less than 140 miles per hour. Its wings, wrapped in doped linen, flapped through the air at speeds almost laughable compared to the jet-fast fighters of the Luftwaffe. But for squadron leader John Thompson, rolling on a heading toward U-464, none of that mattered. The Swordfish may have been an artifact, but it was his artifact, stable, rugged, forgiving. Its nickname, Stringback, reflected its unbreakable adaptability. The 3-man crew knew they were underdogs, flying what some called suicide specials over hostile waters. "Contact, range 8 miles, called his observer, peering down at the radar scope. The ASV radar was one of the Swordfish's secret weapons, capable of spotting surface ships in darkness or fog. German commanders often didn't believe such primitive aircraft could wield high technology. The Swordfish may have been an artifact, but it was his artifact, stable, rugged, forgiving. Its nickname, Stringbag, reflected its unbreakable adaptability. The 3-man crew knew they were underdogs, flying what some called suicide specials over hostile waters. "Contact, range 8 miles, called his observer, peering down at the radar scope. The ASV radar was one of the Swordfish's secret weapons, capable of spotting surface ships in darkness or fog. German commanders often didn't believe such primitive aircraft could wield high technology. Thompson banked low over the sea, the biplane's massive wings slicing through cold salt spray. His crew, the navigator and rear gunner, braced for engagement. They launched from the escort carrier HMS Archer into the nasty North Atlantic Gap, where U-boats prowled and most modern aircraft couldn't reach. "They're not diving," his observer muttered, surprised. Thompson understood why. German hubris again. They believed their flak alone could stop an attack. The Swordfish's forgiving slow speed, its antiquated construction, made it uniquely dangerous at moments like this. Below his plane, the U-boat began to man its deck guns, intent on an easy kill. But the Swordfish was built for low, slow hunting, able to loiter over a target where faster planes would overshoot. Its simplicity was its shield. Fabric wings could take hits. The open cockpit gave all-around visibility. Nothing to obstruct the pilot's view as he lined up the attack. Tonight's attack would use the Mark 8 depth charge, said to explode at 50 feet. The Swordfish couldn't trust torpedoes against a U-boat, but depth charges, dropped dead center at low altitude, had become a terrifying new tactic. 1,000 yards, the observer warned. The range was closing. Behind him, the gunner steadied his .303 Lewis gun. Thompson throttled back, skimming just feet above the ocean, making himself a maddeningly tough target for the German gunners. Too slow for their calculations, too low to aim at easily. It was a trick born of desperation and creativity. They would fly right into hell's mouth, and Captain Lieutenant Harms was about to realize his mistake.
Flak erupted. Orange tracers zipped into the dim evening, the heavy thump of the 37mm gun and the rapid bark of the 20mm cannon echoing across the water. Harms watched, angry now, as his gunners failed to hit the invader. The Swordfish kept coming, weaving and bouncing with a lazy persistence, impossibly close. "Correct your aim," he barked. Yet the slow, erratic biplane's speed baffled German gunners. They overcompensated for its sluggishness, their shells harmlessly bursting into empty air. Inside the Swordfish, near misses rocked the frame. Shrapnel tore neat holes in fabric wings, but the rugged construction shrugged off damage. There were no critical systems in the wings, nothing vital to hit. 800 yards, said the observer. Sweat beaded on his brow. The attack window was seconds wide. On the U-boat, the watch officer finally broke. "Hercule, we should dive!" Harm's confidence cracked. "Alarm! Dive! Dive!" he screamed. Below decks, chaos. Klaxons blared, men tumbled down ladders, engines cut out. But the Type 14 was huge and slow to submerge. It would take too long. Thompson pressed the attack, eyes locked on the towering conning tower, a perfect target. The deck guns fell silent as Germans scrambled for the hatches. White wake foamed as the boat started its dive. Too late. 500 yards, the observer whispered. The Swordfish, hugging the waves, sped toward the conning tower. Tom Pearson squeezed off a defiant burst from the Lewis gun. Their depth charge was ready. 300 yards. On the sinking submarine, panic took hold. Harms could feel the tilt under his feet, the bow dropping, stern rising, death angle. 200 yards. Thompson waited until the final moment. The submarine's bow dipped. The conning tower stayed in clear view. Men clustered desperately around it. "Release!" he yelled. The depth charge tumbled through the air, splashing into the water right next to the conning tower. Thompson pulled hard on the stick, climbing away as the submarine vanished beneath and chaos exploded.
The depth charge detonated at 50 feet. Underwater physics are merciless. Water doesn't compress, and the shock wave transfers nearly all explosive energy straight into the pressure hull. Inside U-464, the world ended.
The blast hit with thunderous force, steel crumpling, fuel tanks rupturing, pipes bursting, and men hurled into bulkheads. Everything broke at once: pumps, engines, radios, the delicate resupply piping. Seawater crashed through a dozen fractures. On the conning tower, Harms was thrown down by the blast, dazed and bleeding. The deck tilted as the boat lost buoyancy. "She's going down, Herr Kalau," someone cried. Harms watched the stern rise, its massive propellers spinning uselessly above the sea, the bow slicing into the cold Atlantic. No time remained. "Abandon ship!" he shouted, voice lost in the chaos. Not all could escape. Some burst from hatches, leaping into oil-slicked water. Others were trapped below decks as water surged in, flooding passageways. The submarine rose, nearly vertical, before slipping under for good. In the Swordfish, circling above, Thompson's crew watched as the oil slick spread, debris bobbing. From 53 men, only a handful survived the suction and freezing waters to be rescued days later. Thompson marked their position and turned for home. Their obsolete biplane had destroyed one of Germany's rare and vital tankers, ending a threat measured not in guns, but in endurance and reach. U-464's loss shocked the German Navy. Admiral Donitz ordered every U-boat to dive immediately upon spotting aircraft, no exceptions. The age of boasting gun duels was over. Strategically, losing a milk cow meant dozens of attack subs were stranded, forced back to base early. Wolf packs disbanded. The submarine offensive began to falter. Allied tactics grew deadlier. The Swordfish continued its unlikely career. Until the end of the war, biplanes haunted the seas, outliving their replacements and tallying more kills. Their simplicity, toughness, and the ingenuity of their crews became legend. On the German side, arrogance was replaced by caution. U-464's grave lay deep in the Atlantic, a steel coffin that marks a turning point, a moment when the pride of men and machines gave way before an obsolete weapon, and the war took a turn that led, inexorably, to German defeat. For every surviving Swordfish crew, the lesson was burned into memory. It wasn't the newest, fastest, or prettiest aircraft that won the day. It was adaptability, creativity, and refusal to be intimidated by enemy hubris. The museum piece had the final word. And somewhere in the darkness of the ocean, the last bubbles rose over the wreck of U-464.